With our next three panelists here to do another lightning round on this, and then we'll take questions at the end of the third. Let's start off now with Matt Jones, who's in charge of future infotainment at Jaguar Land Rover. He's also president of the Genevieve Alliance, which is an open source platform for automakers to center on. Please welcome Matt.
Yeah, I do. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Thank you. Thanks very much. I'm really glad to be here. I'm going to start off by taking a step back and thinking about why we actually want updates to the vehicle. Everybody in this room, I can pretty much guarantee, you're thinking, well, I wish my car would do that. And actually, piggybacking on what local motors have just shown, why do we want that? Well, now and again, we go back to our customers and we say, well, what do you actually want in the vehicle of the future? Why is it important to you? And we go back to their customer expectations. Because ultimately, everybody that drives cars has an expectation of what they want that car to do. And it's up to us, as one of the many automotive OEMs on the planet, to deliver that. But the expectations are changing. It's very much about what their smartphone's doing. Jaguar Land Rover is not competing with other OEMs' infotainment systems. We're really competing on the expectations that are set by the latest iPad Pro. Came out last week. Suddenly, people are more happy with larger screens in the vehicle. But the big challenge that we've got going forwards, everybody expects regular updates and additions. It's no longer acceptable to have even an AM/FM radio player that is stationary. You buy the car in 2015. You expect added features to keep up with the rest of your connected life. And as a car maker, it's really important that in the future there's a healthy automotive ecosystem of different players all contributing their IP to the future vehicle. In the same way, if you look at your smartphone, Apple doesn't create all of the apps on this device. They never would. And actually, it's such a fantastic device, the same with the Android devices, because any startup anywhere in the world can rapidly get their product to market. But why is that? One, because they can rapidly update the software on your device. You can go to the App Store, you can press a button, pay 99 cents, sometimes it's free, and you have that experience instantaneously. That's the expectation we're competing with. But the other major element to it is that that device has a standardized platform. Millions and millions of Android handsets out there. Millions and millions of iPhones out there. Jaguar Land Rover, we sell about 500,000 vehicles a year. BMW, about 2 million. Toyota, about 10 million. We're not even in the same scale. But actually, if you take all of the vehicles sold across all of these different OEMs on an annual basis, we're competing with the number of devices that they've got out there in terms of the market share. How can we actually do that, though? How can we have a standardized platform? Well, for the last 5 years, Genevieve, I'm the president of Genevieve as well, so I have to put that on there. That's my disclosure out of the way. Has pulled together 160, 170 different partners in the automotive ecosystem and says, we recognize that this is an issue. It's not sustainable from automotive perspective to have operating systems in our vehicles that ultimately the customer doesn't care about because it doesn't provide anything that they touch or feel. It's tying up hundreds of engineers within automotive OEMs with these proprietary operating systems. Genevieve standardizing a Linux-based, free, open-source system will enable the startups, maybe the startups that are presenting one floor down from us today, to get their technology into the vehicles faster. But actually, that was great. That was great 5 years ago. But even Genevieve and everything in automotive has to evolve. And ultimately, that's evolving through its new project of remote vehicle interaction. I don't know how many people actually had a chance to have a look at the fantastic orange F-Type convertible downstairs. If anybody wants it for the weekend, just let me know afterwards. But ultimately, that platform, it's fully connected to the web in an open source way that's not being created by Jaguar Land Rover, but has been created with all the contributions from the open source community, lots of which are outside automotive, in order to give a platform that enables all of the data to be warehoused off the vehicle. For future ideas to securely interact with that vehicle remotely, be it from the web or from a device, and importantly, to software update that vehicle or any other vehicles that are based on that open source project in the future very, very rapidly. So why are we doing that? Why have we actually created a system where today you can go and download for free software update to a standardized Geneva platform, integrate it into your vehicle of the future, hopefully put it into your local motors car that you've just bought or 3D printed, and added the features you care about? Ultimately, it goes back to those customer expectations. Just before CES this year, we were looking at the number of different software over-the-air platforms that were available to car manufacturers. 42. It's probably more by now, but at the start of January 2015, there was 42 proprietary software platforms out there for software over the air. I can't name 42 OEMs. And ultimately, as a customer, your smartphone in your pocket has been updating itself for many years. Your Mac, your PC, your Windows system, it updates itself. What we really care about from a customer and a driver's perspective is being able to add those extra applications on very much more rapidly than we can do today. And this platform, it's not just aimed at car companies. It's aimed at students, at startups, at service providers, to give them a higher starting point so they can actually generate new stuff for us, the drivers, as opposed to spending man-years of effort repeating something that the industry solved many years ago. And why is somebody from Jaguar Land Rover on the stage saying this today? Well, I'm lucky enough to run a technology center in Portland in Oregon, and we've got almost 80 developers, and we're recruiting more all the time, always focusing on that customer experience. And it was actually painful for me to say to companies 3 or 4 years ago, yeah, we'd love to work with you, and in 39 months, in 36 months, in 42 months, we can get your software on a car. And you can see the look of shock on this startup. Fantastic technology, very innovative, and then we try as an industry to stagnate them and say, you know, in 39 months' time, I might give you $1 a car for a license fee for this. That doesn't meet our customers' expectations. It doesn't encourage people to innovate in future automotive platforms. And in reality, the lifespan of a startup in the US is about 18 months. That's great, but you can imagine their face. It's like, I'm going to be owned by Facebook. I'm going to be a billionaire in 18 months' time. You're going to pay me $1 a car in 36? That ultimately doesn't work. But using the open source standardized platforms, Jaguar Land Rover has managed to bring that down to just 9 months from the end of prototype to get that into production. That's critical. 9 months still seems like a long time, but this is for embedded software into the car. But this means now that I can sit in front of a startup, say, I'd like to collaborate with you. I'd like to put you in touch with all of my colleagues at Geneva, Peter at BMW, Murata-san at Toyota, all of these other guys, and say, actually, why don't you build on a Geneva platform? It's very close to our production system, which you can see downstairs in the silver Jaguar XJ. Get your product to market very, very quickly, but it's more important than me as Jaguar Land Rover. If you've built it for the Geneva platform, very easily transferred across all of those other car manufacturers. With the software over the air, with the connectivity options, you don't need to worry about those underlying service layers. You can focus on making your startup, your medium-sized company, whatever you are, relevant to our customer going forwards. And that's the most important bit. So with that, hopefully I stayed within the 6 minutes, and I'd like to thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks so much. Stay with us for Q&A. Come on up. Thank you, Matt. Interesting stuff, and I encourage you to see what he's talking about down in the demo cars. Let's move now to a company that is sort of in the middle, the glue between the technologies and the cars that will have this, what they call software-defined car era coming into them. Please welcome now the CTO from Movimento, Mahbubul Alam.
Good afternoon. Are you guys awake? All right, what a great presentation from Local Motors and, of course, from Matt on Geneva. So I'm going to talk about the software-defined car. Let me see. So we have been, today it was a very interesting morning where we are trying to define what is connected car. What is the definition of connected car? What is the definition of smart connected car? What is the definition of intelligent connected car? What is the definition of semi-autonomous connected car? What is the definition of autonomous connected car? What is the definition of driverless car? There's too many of those, right? Nobody has defined in the industry. So I challenge you all to try to help define for ourselves and for the market as well. So as we in Movimento looked at it, we said, it is the journey of the software in the vehicle. And it is actually the software that is defining the feature and functionality of the car. And that's how we coined it as the era of the software-defined car. So how did we get here? So today, this morning, you heard car sharing. You heard customer expectations. You heard about Uber, about, and you also heard all about software. But what is underlying? What is the underlying theme? So I want to share with you the bigger theme, the mega theme that is playing. And I call it the third era of digitalization. And as I go through this, you will be very familiar with some of this. If you look at the first era, we had the internet. It was transactional communication. We made some transactions, and companies posted, and we searched the web. We got great things. That lasted about a decade. We all know this. Then we moved to the second era, which was the social media, which is interaction, not transaction, interaction between the users as well as, and social tools and social media enabled us to do that. And we are all benefiting from that phase. But we have actually entered the third era already. And what is the third era? You heard it, but let me write it for you. It's called the collaborative economy. It is ability to use the social media as the digital trusted platform to enable to share our valuable commodity. It can be car, it can be house, it can be your lawnmower, it can be anything that is valuable. And you have seen some of the economics that the generation Y or the millennials will have less disposable. They want something as a service. They do not want to own something. They want it when they want it and as they need it. So this is what we're talking about. So what is fueling this collaborative economy? What are the underlying themes of this collaborative economy? Now, you could take this to any direction. It doesn't have to apply for only car. You have the Uber, the Lyft, you have Airbnb, you have clothes sharing. A lot of those sharings are going on. And it is basically based on a couple of 7 factors, which is basically end user savings. It has to save the end user. It has to mean something to you. Of course, the cost of connectivity has gone down. So that's amazing. So this is fueling. In addition, the society is more environmental friendly. Whether you talk about green car or electric vehicle, there is some consciousness of our environment and what we can do, but also the aspect of social networking. And then combined with some of the technological things, which is smart devices, smartphone, 5 billion people with mobile phones, cloud platform, availability of application, and ability to run, compute, and networking at the same price as any big company can. A startup can now get a space in the cloud and do all kinds of computation. So the democratization of computing and networking and platform in the cloud. And the third is the payment, the e-payment, the mobile payment. Look at the Squares of the world. This trust that was related with the financial industry now is democratized. When you bring it all together, there are 3 themes that plays out. One is talked about the economic factor, which is really about the money to the end user. Second is the social factor. And the third is the technology factor. This is what is fueling the collaborative economy. And we have entered that era. So anything we do, we have to think about reusing, configurable, local motors. You saw that. Whether it is a hardware reconfigurable or 3D, it is that same philosophy of thinking. And you have to think as a company, as you think about over-the-year updates and so on, you have to think about programmability. You have to think about continuous evolution. You have to think about how can you keep the customer expectation current with the time. So how do you keep the software updated? How can you personalize? One day you would have your software car in the cloud, an avatar, your personal feature functionality. It could be your settings, it could be your music infotainment, everything. And you'll just take a car sharing, and those profile will be downloaded. That is what you have to think about from basic updates and of the feature functionality. So you would say automotive and collaborative economy. What is it about? Well, we talked about Uber, Lyft, and all those things. But actually, what is happening is a consumption model is changing. And when consumption model change, it means the person who is selling it or trying to do the monetization model changes. The behavior changes. What does it mean? It means really a disruption in the value chain. Look at the mobile phone. We used to have dealers on the mobile phone. Apple came and removed all the dealers, and it's a direct retail. We are seeing in Tesla, there is no dealer, direct retail. So there is some change coming into the disruption of the value chain, and it will go all the way to the entire supply chain. The way things will be sold and bought, and who are all the players are all up in the air. It's a new disruption model that is going to fuel. And in all of this, the OTA, the over-the-air, really drives the new automotive economy. Its ability to configure, change, modify, personalize, monetize through the update software anytime, any place you want. So, and this OTA platform must have 3 key characteristics. One is about software lifecycle of the vehicle. If you are going to do car sharing, the OEMs now own the car. We have heard the number of car is going to decrease and number of miles are going to increase. If that is the case, then someone has to maintain the software lifecycle of the vehicle. You have to have bidirectional OTA. Many people have a misconception it's something from the cloud to the car. No, it's also from the data from the car to the cloud. It's a bidirectional behavior that will unleash a whole new economy, which is the vehicle data-related economy, both from the personalized data as well as machine data from the vehicle. And the third one is, of course, the cybersecurity practice, the ability of a software practice, which is constant update, constant vulnerability testing, constant code improvements, is a practice that we have to not only do at the vehicle, but all the way through the tier 1, all the way to the supply chain. So the OTA platform that we were looking is not only about sending a software to the car, but it's also about getting the data from the car to the cloud or server. It's also about running code analysis, vulnerability testing, proactive code updates. We are very familiar with our smartphones and laptops, and we have been doing it all along. This is going to come to our car. So why not enable OTA today? We don't have to wait for the next generation embedded OTA car. We can do today with our smartphone. How many of you remember how you updated your Android and Apple 5 years ago? Do you remember that? It was a PC download, connect with a USB, and then we updated. It was later that Apple and they all came with a Wi-Fi update. You had to download it, store it, update it, backup, first backup, and all those. So it is possible today to use your smartphone as a way to download the software and use your Bluetooth or NFC connection to update the vehicle. Of course, there are certain things have to be done, but it is doable. If we want, we can make it happen now. Second, you can do retroactive OTA. When a vehicle goes into the dealership, and if it has connectivity to the infotainment, there are ways that we should be able to connect back and add an application to that infotainment to do this OTA. So it doesn't only have to be the embedded OTA that will come in a next generation vehicle architecture. The third one is absolutely the embedded OTA. That is the way to go. This is something we can do together. This is not something new. We have been updating devices all along, and it's really, me coming from a networking and telecom industry, it looks like, we take it for granted all the time. Why should it be something new in the automotive? We do our financial transaction. Our nuclear plants are connected over internet. Our utilities are connected. Yes, we have to secure it, but all those things are getting securely connected, and we just have to be on top of it. If we have the software and security first practice into our DNA and in our product development, we can definitely enable that. With that, I want to say, let's make OTA happen.
All right. Thank you, Mahbubul. Thank you. Have a seat. We'll get to some questions in a moment. Our last of these three panelists, and we're going to take your questions in this area. Joining us now from a division of HARMAN, which is Redbend, and this is a company that is in the business of managing this OTA layer and software as a service to the vehicle. Please welcome their EVP of Products and Marketing, Mr. Oren Betzaleli.
So 30 hours of traveling in here for 6 minutes of presentation. Never mind. Okay. So I want to start with, few of the drivers that everybody are talking about with, that drives the industry of over-the-air updates. We all know that the number of cars that are going to be connected is growing all the time. Some analysts say that by 2025, all of the cars that will be connected, will be manufactured, will be connected. The second element is the amount of computer units, ECUs in a car. We hear numbers like 50 units, 70 units, 100 units. Analysts say that within few years it will grow into 125 even, and even more. The next one is the number of lines of code per car. Everybody are talking about around the number of 100 million lines of codes. Analysts today talk that within a decade that will duplicate, or maybe even get into 300 million with the introduction of autonomous driving and all these sophisticated mechanisms and algorithms. The next two are to do with recalls. Number of recalls is growing, 52 million recalls in the US alone in 2014, and some analysts associate around 50% of those recalls to software, either generated because of software issues or hardware issues that can simply be resolved by software updates. These are some of the common things that everybody talked about, but what I want to talk about today is how to look at the broader aspects of the economics of over-the-air updates, outside the issue of recall, which is obvious that everybody are talking about. And I want to do that by going through the process or the life cycle of the connected car. And I want to start with a process that usually people do not associate with over-the-air update, which is the engineering process. During the engineering process, there are a lot of cycles of testing and flashing and going back to testing cars and flash them. Hundreds or maybe dozens of those cycles. Usually, that's done using manual process, sending labor, people, over to the testing cars and flashing them manually. Think about the time it takes. Think about the cost of labor it takes. Think about the time to market that can be improved. So by implementing over-the-air update through the engineering process, way before the car is being manufactured, you can start gaining a lot of benefits and economical benefits out of over-the-air updates. Let's move on to the next process. The next process I want to talk about is the production, the assembly line. One of our customers actually implemented over-the-air update for production line, not for the common use case that everybody is talking about when a car is at the garage, at the customer house, and so on. The idea here is that in the production line, in the assembly line, they have, I don't know exactly how many, but multiple stations that the car has to go through. Each one is between 4 and 5 minutes. And what this customer came to realize is that the amount of software is growing so much that 4-minute station is not enough to flash software. The software is now bigger, with maps, with content, with more data, with more application, with more lines of code. So that started to create bottlenecks in the production lines. And what happened is, very often, they would stop the production line to do refresh of the software. So think about the economical aspect of stopping a production line. Think about the gaining that you can gain by implementing over-the-air software management and update in the assembly line. So let's move on. Let's move to the next process. The next process, I call it staging. I don't know if that's a common word, but once the car leaving the production line, it takes days to weeks before it actually gets into the target destination, the dealership, or even the customer. Using that time, it's very common to think that OEM has practically nothing to do with it. They have no control. But in fact, when those cars are on the parking lot or on the ship or in the yard or on the way to the dealership, they can actually, with over-the-air software update, they can make sure that recent bugs, if you may, can be updated. They can update new features. And in fact, if you think about, they can use those stages to simplify the supply chain of software to the assembly line. Instead of making sure that each car that gets into the assembly line is fitted with the right software to the target, This car goes to Brazil, so I put the Brazil version on. This car goes to whatever China, I'll put the Chinese version. What they have done is that they make sure that every car is getting the vanilla basic software in the assembly line and handle the localization at the destination over the air. So think about the aspects, the economical aspects of that. Again, time to market, time to road, reducing a lot of manual labor costs in the staging area. The next, of course, is the dealership. It's very common that people associate over-the-air update as a threat to dealership. But think about if dealers will start embrace over-the-air update, think about the economic aspect it can bring to dealers from cutting costs of time. And more importantly, if I think about it, improving the customer experience. If I have to go to a dealer and spend 3 hours just for software update, this is frustrating. Doesn't make any sense. But if dealers will start think about a McDrive experience, a drive-through experience through the dealer just to get software over the air, maybe the more important updates done at the dealer with just a technician just checking that everything went fine at the end, that can be a lot of benefit to dealers and to customers. And again, there is some benefits, economical benefits to it. And then the last part is what everybody is talking about, the consumer home, reducing recalls. That's a very common scenario. This is the scenario that everybody are talking about. And the last thing, people also say that over-the-air update is not only saving me costs, it's also generating costs because I need now to pay to service providers tons and millions of dollars to download hundreds of megabytes through the cellular network. When with smart Delta technology, this can be reduced, as you can see here, by 95%. And the cost and the amount of time can be reduced by 50% as well. So to summarize this process, when we think about the economics of over-the-air update, it's not only recalls. It's cost, dealer costs, manual labor costs, engineering costs, communication costs. It's time to market. It's time to road. It's shortening those time, which have a lot of benefits, economical benefits, and eventually something that is very hard to quantify, but it's customer experience, customer satisfaction that will drive the next purchase and overall satisfaction of the customer. So that was it for 30-hour drive flight. So thank you. And thank you.
All right. Oren, thank you. And then we got time for 2 quick questions. Thank you very much. We have 2 microphones. Now we pulled out the ones in the back because I couldn't see anybody back there. So if you've got questions, come on up to the microphones that are here at the front of the aisles. This is a very good, meaty, technical session about the nuts and bolts, how this works. Okay, sir, let us know who you're with and what your question is for our panel.
Hello, my name is Seiji Kawakami. I'm from Bose Corporation. I have a question for the panelists. OTAs are typically done through the OEM. However, it seems like there's a trust and litigation issues that's spreading from third-party suppliers to OTAs directly to somebody's car. What technical or monetization schemes are necessary to break through this mold that exists today?
Who has thoughts on that?
Maybe I'll start. I think one of the issues that you raised is that, when you think about it, car manufacturers are used to work in this supplier approach. They have a supplier for each component. And until today, I think what you see is that they try to apply the same concept for over-the-air update. They want over-the-air update for this component from this supplier. They want over-the-air update for this component from this supplier, and it doesn't work. When you think about over-the-air update, OEMs start to need to understand that it needs to be strategic. It needs to be horizontal. They need to think about the entire car. And yes, it has implications on the suppliers. They need to adapt to the methodology and the strategy that OEM dictate, and OEM needs to start dictating such strategies and methodologies and protocols and mechanisms. And it will take time, but I think the market will get there.
And to add to that, this isn't actually a new problem from an OEM. If you think today, we've got 125 different ECUs on a vehicle, not all from one manufacturer. And OEMs have got many years of experience at specifying the default software internal, when you plug in that J1962, how do we update each of those 125 ECUs? So when it comes to specifying that standard methodology for updating a third-party component, a lot of that learning, working with companies like Redbend and others in the Geneva Alliance, we will fix that. The other thing that I'd like to add, and you can probably agree with this, in the past automotive OEMs have bought a black box from Bosch or Visteon or Delphi or HARMAN or anybody else that has hardware and embedded software. But that's changing. As you saw before, there's 100 million lines of code in a vehicle. Now, no supplier really wants to lock in an OEM, notice the way I put that round, to buying their hardware. And the OEM is absolutely desperate to get the software reuse across generations and across different hardware platforms from different suppliers. So when it comes to the ownership model of who actually owns that software that runs on a vehicle and who actually controls that method of updating, be it over the air or through a cable to the vehicle, that is changing rapidly. And hopefully by the time we actually get to a more abundant market of over-the-air provision, a lot of those issues on how is software and hardware being separated within the OEMs, that will effectively change.
Okay. Let me get one more question here for our panel. Sir, who are you with and what's your question?
Jonas Nicholson from OpenCar. And my question is, over the last 16 years, I've worked on several automotive programs, and it seems like the dealer franchises have a lot of control over what gets updated and the direct line to the consumer. So they've actually been able to shut down things like over-the-air map updates and things like that because they make a lot of money bringing people back in, flashing the ECUs, and then charging the OEM back during the warranty period. How do you get around those kinds of problems?
Mahbubul, what do you think about this?
I think the dealers have a very critical role to play. First of all, an update can happen in a controlled environment. When you bring a vehicle into the dealership, it is not running, it's not on your highway, so it's in a safe environment. So I call the trusted network, under a trusted network, so they could do that and that could be a fraction of the cost if it happens over the air at the dealership. And if you go beyond that, once the vehicle is out of the warranty period, the dealership has a huge role to play for the life cycle of that vehicle. So that could be, your warranty might be 3 years or 4 years, but your vehicle is probably 15 years. So there is a whole time that the dealership could play a critical role and step up and provide localization software, keep the car current so that people can maintain on those vehicles and keep those vehicles and they don't feel like the vehicle is outdated. So I think the dealership has a huge opportunity to step up and be take over the baton from the OEM once the vehicle is out of the warranty period.
Okay. Very briefly, can you tell us anything about the communication you have with JLR dealers around this issue?
We've actually done some research, and we talk to a lot of our dealer network on a week-by-week basis. And over the last 3 to 5 years, we've seen this changing. If you think how expensive it is to run a dealership and the touch points that you would actually want as a dealer, your focus in life is selling cars to make profit, more cars on the road, everybody's effectively happy. They don't want bays in their workshop tied up doing software updates with a cable. Some of those software updates can take an hour. That electrical engineer, the trained technician, is just sat watching a bar go across for an hour. So when we actually talk to our dealerships, it's very much changing. They don't want to be doing the software updates in the same way as they were previously. They want positive experiences and touch points with their dealers, with their customers, ideally on a day-to-day or a week-by-week basis. But then they're less interested in performing diagnostics and software over-the-air updates.
Yeah, watching a progress bar, not the most valuable expenditure of time.
Yeah.
Oren, you get the last thought.
Just one comment to that. I think with time, what will happen is that there will be a balance between what kind of updates will be done by dealers and what kind of updates will be done by the OEM or someone, over the air when the car is at the garage or on the road even. More sensitive updates maybe at the dealer, more user experience updates or application will be happening as the car is at the customer garage. So there will be, this market will evolve to create some balance between those two things.
Okay, there's a division there of different types of updates.
And software and connectivity is effectively giving the dealerships that opportunity now to have positive touch points with things like come in and see us. We've got, it's that advertising in the cockpit that they've desired for a long period of time. And since that connectivity is solving that touch point issue, they're less stressed with effectively getting that car in to update it for no good reason.
Interesting. Okay, I want to thank these guys for taking one of our most engineering-dense topics and making it very understandable. Thank you guys from Redbend, Movimento, and Jag Land Rover. Thank you guys.